Take one look at Dean Ambrose's body of work in his days as independent star Jon Moxley, and it's obvious what WWE saw in him. His promos were part Heath Ledger's Joker, part loose cannon Brian Pillman, and his chaotic, unpredictable personality could keep eyes glued to the screen, and that's even before he set foot inside the ring. As Moxley, and even today as Dean Ambrose, he's never been a lofty technical wrestling wizard, but he doesn't have to be. His wild movements, natural charisma, exceptional timing, and total lack of inhibition put Dean Ambrose among the most enjoyable performers of the modern day WWE. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, he is currently out with injury, but we hope that he comes back very soon indeed. And personally, I hope it's as a dirty, dastardly little heel. This list will take a look at some of the most must-see matches of the man WWE likes to refer to as the lunatic fringe. Both his WWE and independent resumes qualify for this list, as well as his time in WWE's developmental program, because wherever he's gone, the man known as Dean Ambrose has left a rather indelible mark. So without further ado, I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 Dean Ambrose matches you must see before you die. And never forget, of course, to hit subscribe and to join us. Number 10, Dean Ambrose vs Triple H, Roadblock 2016. Talk about a cruel tease. When Ambrose pinned WWE Champion Triple H with dirty deeds, everybody thought that he'd won the belt, and that WrestleMania 32's main event had been totally saved at the last second. But alas, Dean's foot had broken the plane of the bottom rope, so no title change. Get ready for Reigns vs Triple H in Dallas. Oh dear, we were so close to being happy. The match in question is Exhibit A as to how effective Ambrose can be as a main event babyface superstar. Working with a heel from a previous generation like Triple H led to a more reined-in structure to the match, relying a little bit less on mindless spots and a little bit more on understated storytelling. For the most part, this match told the story of Ambrose trying to genuinely outmaneuver and out-wrestle the wily veteran, the cerebral assassin. He thinks an awful lot. And for quite a portion of the match, Dean was actually doing so before getting hampered by the winning pinfall that could never reach him. Sadly, Triple H won, and 3 weeks later, Dean was getting in very small amounts of offense on the beast incarnate Brock Lesnar. At the same time, Triple H was going down to Roman Reigns in one of the most poorly received WrestleMania main events of all time. This title match at Roadblock was a look at an alternate reality, one which many of us might call a preferable one. Number 9, Dean Ambrose vs Seth Rollins, SummerSlam 2014. Former Shield brothers Ambrose and Rollins have had their fair share of gratifying matches against each other, but the most energetic of the lot was easily their reckless lumberjack match at the 2014 SummerSlam. This match came about 2.5 months into their intense, hate-filled feud that spawned from Rollins double-crossing his Shield friends. And the idea was that 20 strapping wrestlers posing as lumberjacks could keep it from getting too out of control, in theory anyway. Truthfully, this was only a lumberjack match in name only. The main function of the hired muscle around the ring was basically to provide collateral damage for Dean and Seth to totally wipe out in their wake. From Ambrose wildly suplexing Rollins onto a horde of fellow wrestlers, to Ambrose diving off the top rope onto Rollins while he was being carried up the aisle by lumberjacks, this match never stops to catch its breath. Ambrose's total obsession with keeping Rollins from the WWE Championship set the tone for this psychotic, fast-paced brawl. Number 8, Jon Moxley vs Jimmy Jacobs, Dragon Gate USA Bushido, Code of the Warrior. Back to the days of Jon Moxley now for this showdown with Jimmy Jacobs. Moxley had Jacobs' number in previous Dragon Gate USA bouts, winning a street fight over him the month before, and now found himself matched up with the future WWE writer turned Bullet Club selfie taker in an I Quit match. Oh Jimmy, what were you doing taking that selfie? But on the plus side, you looked bloody lovely in it. This I Quit match wasn't so much a battle of submission holds, although there were a few chicken wings here and a few Texas cloverleafs there, but it was actually all about Moxley's instability matching up with Jacobs' resilience. At different points, Moxley mutilated Jacobs' face with a steel spike and even bound his arms behind his back with a belt to keep him from defending himself. Lots of blood was spilled over the course of this match, mostly Jimmy Jacobs, although the eventual zombie princess valiantly fought back, even managing to snare a guillotine choke even with his arms tied behind his back. It was something like one of those old classic Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard I Quit matches with a bit of a modern twist and some truly inspired wrestling along the way. Number 7, Dean Ambrose vs CM Punk from an FCW live event on October 21st, 2011. Thankfully for us, fan cam footage has made the rounds of a Friday night FCW live event, FCW being NXT's spiritual predecessor. It featured an arrogant Dean Ambrose after winning a quick squash match, talking trash about none other than CM Punk. As good fortune would have it, Punk was actually on hand that evening to sign autographs and pose for pictures and that sort of thing, and emerged from behind the curtain to respond to Ambrose's words. To the delight of the several hundred fans on hand in Florida that night, Punk versus Ambrose was shockingly going to take place there and then. For over 20 minutes, Ambrose kept pace with the more experienced man, two unique presences battling in what was mostly a scientific battle. Or at least it was a scientific battle before a ref bump and a subsequent low blow turned the tide. However, the tide turned once more when Punk returned the low blow, winning with a go to sleep shortly thereafter. However, what stands out even more than the match is Punk's promo afterwards, in which he put Ambrose over for having the balls to step up to someone like himself. He also challenged Ambrose to, 5 years down the line, perhaps returning to developmental and giving a star of tomorrow the chance to step up to him, just as Punk had done for the Lunatic Fringe. Sadly, that hasn't yet happened, but we can dream. Number 6, Dean Ambrose versus AJ Styles, BACKLASH 2016. Now, let's tell an uncomfortable truth here. Ambrose's 3-month reign as WWE Champion was admittedly a little bit underdistinguished. His SummerSlam match with Dolph Ziggler lacked a little bit of oomph, and with all the brand extension dust yet to settle, it's not like he was truly the undisputed focus and top star of the promotion. In fact, weirdly, his finest hour as WWE Champion was probably the match in which he dropped the belt to AJ Styles. This match was almost literally all action, even more so in the finishing stretch, as Styles was just the opponent to get the very best out of a high-energy guy like Dean Ambrose. And to be fair, it's almost impossible to have a bad match against AJ Styles. I mean, he could get any of us Cultaholic lads to a pleasant 3.5-star battle on a good day. However, full credit to Ambrose because he held up his end of what's among Styles' best matches on WWE programming. Yes, there was a screwy finish with a low blow and everything, but Styles was a heel and it's standard protocol for WWE villains to cheat, even if only a little tiny bit. Even taking all of this into account, the match was a very, very nice offering from two workers who in many ways couldn't be more different. Number 5, Dean Ambrose versus Kevin Owens, Royal Rumble 2016. It's a little bit strange to open a pay-per-view with a last man standing match, isn't it? Typically a match that promises bone-jarring, nerve-shredding mayhem between sworn enemies wouldn't be relegated to the curtain-jerking spot. However, this was the Royal Rumble, and therefore the main event rightly went to the Royal Rumble. However, no matter, because two CZW veterans in Ambrose and Owens had quite the suitably brutal battle for the Intercontinental Championship. It was probably the best match of the best overall Rumble event in about 6 years or so. Both men sold the hell out of the beatings they dished out to each other, particularly KO, who was later seen dragging his leg behind him when entering the Royal Rumble match, like a bit of a hero actually, which was quite strange given that he was a heel, and quite strange given that actual babyface Roman Reigns took a little nap backstage in the middle of the Royal Rumble. But back to this match, because any bout where Owens yells how much he hates Ambrose while being beaten with chairs is an automatic win in our book. The ending itself was very exciting indeed, as the table assortment that Owens had set up on the outside would later be his undoing. Ambrose shoved him off the turnbuckles and Owens ploughed through the lumber with a nice flip bump. It was lovely. It may not have been a Jon Moxley style CZW deathmatch, but Ambrose's work in a reasonably violent match is still amongst his best. Number 4, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson, Dragon Gate USA, Way of the Ronin 2010. Daniel Bryan's final indie commitment before returning full-time to WWE took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, against an individual whom he'd be squaring off with on pay-per-view a little more than 2 years later. The fact that Bryan was actually WWE United States Champion at the time of this match makes it even more of a little curious gem. Oh, little curious gem. From a character standpoint, the intensely driven Moxley would have wanted nothing more than to add a WWE Champion-sized notch into his own ragged belt. A few submission attempts aside, this match is mostly an undiluted brawl between two men who really have no love lost for one another. There was an excessive amount of forearm and elbow strikes, giving it a real fight to the death sort of situation. In the end, Danielson took a relatively straightforward path to victory, almost battering a hole in Moxley's head with kicks before making him submit to the label lock, or the yes lock, or the no lock, or the yes lock. You know, the submission hold that he does. While the aforementioned Styles match wasn't as intense as this one, it does demonstrate how well Dean Ambrose meshes with the so-called work rate top-tier gods of wrestling. This is perhaps because he can provide an energetic, frenzied contrast to someone's fluid, hard-hitting science, and together they create a beautiful work of art in the ring. Number 3, Dean Ambrose versus William Regal, FCW, July 15th, 2012. Experienced veteran Regal managed to defeat the younger Ambrose on an episode of FCW TV about 8 months prior, sending the younger man into a virtual blind rage. Ambrose naturally hounded Regal for a rematch, only to be coolly brushed off each time, the old lion repeatedly dismissing this punky little cub with a flick of his British wrist. Lovely. This would not sit well with Dean Ambrose, whose maddened compulsion would only drive him harder, taking to using the Englishman's moves in his own matches as a means of getting William Regal's attention. Ambrose finally got his wish on what would actually be the final FCW broadcast before the NXT rebrand. The two bitterly fought tooth and nail for 15 minutes, and the match was actually concluded via stoppage after Regal's ear began bleeding, a result of Ambrose just repeatedly kneeing him against an exposed turnbuckle. That'll do it. That'll cause your ear to bleed, yes. After the match, a wounded but impressed Regal applauded Ambrose and then symbolically and dramatically allowed him to take him out with a violent knee trembler. This match, and the whole rivalry in fact, was about as conclusive as it could be without a pinfall or submission victory, and the storyline en route to this match is amongst the best you'll see in the 21st century. Number 2, The Shield versus the Wyatt family, Elimination Chamber 2014. That's right, we couldn't do this list without mentioning The Shield, because it's wrong to really do an Ambrose list without putting the spotlight firmly on his time with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. You can't tell the story of him without mentioning that famous trio that he was originally part of. And you know that a match is a highly anticipated bout when the fans are chanting "This is awesome" at all 6 men before they've even locked up. That's right, this 6-man tag had big expectations to meet, not just because of the crowd's breathless anticipation, but because The Shield had been in some truly stellar 6-man tags throughout their 15 months on the main roster. This was a match that really over-delivered, and although credit must be given to Seth Rollins for his star-making performance therein, Dean Ambrose still did his ragged, dirty best to impress as well. In fact, all 6 men worked hard to match the energy inside the building, and the result was a match that managed to exceed the already lofty expectations. I want to give a big shout out to Eric Rowan. Well done, Eric Rowan. Well done, mate. Number 1, The Shield versus Daniel Bryan, KANE and RYBACK, TLC 2012. The first match that The Shield would have on an official WWE main roster program could very well be one of the greatest 6-man tag matches in WWE history. Actually, tag is a bit of a misleading word to use here, given that it was essentially a tables, ladders and chairs match without the climbing. Reigns looked obviously powerful, and Rollins got in his expected dives and falls and flips, but Ambrose's subtle tics and mannerisms did their part to help carry the bout to the level it reached. His face-contorting sell of a chair across the back proved to be very memorable, as did his anarchic flailing punches and madcap scrambles in order to join in on the vicious Shield attack. In an already chaotic match, Ambrose brought an even more chaotic feel, the glue that helped hold together what could have been any other weapons-based spot fest in other circumstances. So yes, the Shield's first TV match hit the mark thanks to the work of all 6 men involved, but we'll always remember it for Dean Ambrose's frantic contributions. So that's our list. Did we leave off your favourite Dean Ambrose or Jon Moxley match? Let us know in the comments section down below. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Thank you very much for watching. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to, @JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic, and check out our Patreon too, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And finally, never forget to join us.